So last year, if you were here last year, I briefed the way ahead with Art of the Possible at the time. We since have renamed that through General Gabrum's vision, Art of the Probable. His thing is, possible is Air Force, Army's probable. You probably heard him say that. But the way ahead, I'm going to brief you on the scorecard. How did we do with Art of the Probable last year? I will give you a very quick synopsis of what, if you weren't here last year, what this means and what it really, the process that we've worked through since 3 October of last year. So next slide, please. Just a very quick recap of what it is. If you came in late the other day, even through the hurricane, we lost 8 days of production. We still came very close to our goal of $856 million of revenue. We ended the year at 819.4. As you can see there, 100% of recap. Talked to Billy Jackson. You know, after the hurricanes, I pretty much told him, hey, Billy, I think we're going to do 27 helicopters this year, only because we've lost so many days of production. Just very truthful with you. And through the hard work of my directors and the leadership at CCAD, we got through the 32 and then have still been able to build 41 helicopters throughout the year. And we already talked about this the other day, 13,000 secondary items back to the warfighter and back on those aircraft. So next slide, please. So let me talk to you a little bit about where we were at in 2012. As you can see, we were at 5,500 folks in 2012, but as we started pulling back from Iraq, reducing the flight hours, reducing the aircraft stress, we're back here now in 2013 or 2017 at that number. But when you count all the folks that support CCAD, my OEMs, my partners, it's a little over 4,000 that are really still on the ground, the footprint here at CCAD. That may change with some of the TELS transitions, but again, we always adjust our workforce for our workload. But as you can see, the height of it was about 2012. So just a very quick background. I was at AMCOM for a year before taking command out of the War College, only to learn about this industrial base that no tactical aviators ever really gotten a grasp of. And it really is the business side of the Army. I couldn't tell you what a route and bomb was 18 months ago. I couldn't tell you what these guys did for a living. I couldn't even tell you what a recap meant. But it was a very quick process of quick study and quick learning from some of the best of the artisans and folks at AMCOM. So next slide. So as I traveled around the country trying to learn what I could do to best improve CCAD, and not to change just for the sake of changing, but what really needed to be changed. And one of the primary things, talking to the PM, talking to the folks, is you got to get warfighters back their helicopters in a faster way. So as I again flew around the country trying to find the best thing to implement at CCAD, we decided on what the Air Force calls Art of the Possible. And it's really based on a theory of constraints. And you probably heard me say this last year, but I just want to, if you didn't, I want to recap it. So everything we do has a constraint. When you come out of the airport, when you got here, your constraint was probably baggage check. You're waiting for baggage. So how do you attack those constraints? There's a couple ways, in my opinion, and many have differing opinions, but you attack it with money, which we ran out of in 2013 with sequestration. You attack it with bodies, labor, or you attack it with process. So we had no money, and we reduced our labor. That's why I showed you that slide. So the only way we could do it was through process. And this process, AOP, what we introduced at CCAD, is based on a theory of constraints, and it is really a process flow to ensure that we have everything we need to meet the demand for the warfighter. So next slide, please. So this is a very busy chart, I understand that, but I'm going to just kind of walk you through that for the folks that weren't here last year. So this is a gated system. Everything we do at CCAD is now a gate 1 through 9. But let me talk to you first about gate 0. The power of gate 0, you probably read it if you've read the article that we published. Gate 0 is really our planning process to make sure that we get our constraint right now is our bottleneck gate is gate 4. And only because you can see how long it takes. So with this theory of constraints, we have to plan, just like any good operation in the Army, we're planning 120 days out to ensure that we have material to meet our demand and our bottleneck by gate 4. As you can see, gate 1, 2, and 3, there's not a whole lot of stuff getting put on the aircraft. We're actually disassembling the aircraft doing pre-shop analysis, and doing cleaning. There's not a whole lot that I need there. But when it comes to gate 4, I need the majority of the parts and material flow by gate 4. So if you take 120 days out, I'm planning. So we've built a supercell. Marco Garcia heads our supercell. And all they're worried about right now is getting the parts to the aircraft on time. So the supercell concept is just like a jock floor or a TOC floor. A TOC floor concept is you have your artilleryman, your infantryman, your aviator, your logistician, your medical service, whoever, focused on a problem set. So in our case here, we've got all these folks in supercells, the program managers, supply chain, PCs, MRPs, MDM, maintenance, all those folks are now in one cell in one central location, and we've got a couple supercells, UH-60, AH-64 components. They're focused on the problem set, and that problem set is how do I get material flow to the helicopters by the time they're needed in gate 4. So Don Dawson and his guys can get to work. That has been an issue in the past. It's still an issue because we weren't using LMP like it was supposed to be used. So when we talk about LMP, the Logistics Modernization Program, that's our catalyst to ensure that we're planning properly through the system to make sure we have our material flow. So our weapons, our material flow, our parts. So that is how we're getting it to gate 4. What it flows through, our next gate is our gate 7. And it's when we start really putting the guts in the helicopter, and eventually it gets out gate 9, our test flight. So all that process is what we've changed this entire year. I'm not saying that they weren't doing that in the past, but it wasn't joined into one central process. It was compartmentalized. So PSA was focused on PSA only, cleaning on cleaning. But now we have everyone focused on the holistic view of what do we need to get this helicopter out in time. And oh, by the way, we're joined at the hip. Your success is my success, your failure may lead to my failure. So this gated system, if it last year when we thought it would flow properly, it really would be seamless flow, and then the helicopters get out, and our goal is 275 days. Did we meet that goal this year? I'll tell you no. We got pretty damn close though. So the end state is this, Army readiness, and goes back out to the warfighters. But again, the brain trust, like Jerome talked about, the brain trust is this supercell that guides us. But everyone's got a piece of the pie when it comes to developing that process flow to aircraft. Now you're asking, how's components look? Well, we didn't apply most of this to components yet because you have to take one bite out of the elephant at a time. If you've been to CCAD, you know how huge it is. We wanted to make sure we were focused on one thing. Once we got better at that process, AOP, so the focus was recap helicopters. After that, we got better at that. Then now, this next year, we're going to focus on components. So as DLA will tell you, so they talk to two different systems, LMP for us, ASP for DLA. They don't talk to each other. But through coordination with the supercells, Marco Garcia, Melissa, and Drew Jackson, those two pieces are finally starting to synchronize, and our ASP's even gotten better. So I was told the other day, and Drew, can I speak out of turn, but our ASP went down from went from 9% to about mid-70s, Drew. Is that about right? That's a big jump for the past year. I will tell you that in cases before, they didn't even care to talk to each other. So now that's another change. So this is what AOP is in a nutshell. So what I'm trying to do for you now is trying to give you a scorecard. How did we do this past year? Next slide. So you can see then versus now. ERP, what we talked about, our LMP and ASP, we have improved that quite a bit. The forecasting accuracy, so right now it's, for LMP, it's 97% accuracy. This is an old slide. Drew told me yesterday. It's 70%, right, Drew? Okay, well, she's very technical. So to me, that's a good thing. But regardless, we are talking and we're improving every single day there. And that's a big deal because if you're going to do, anyone in the room knows this, if you're going to plan for parts, you've got to have the forecasting accuracy to do it, or you're just shooting in the dark. So R bombs, as you can see here, back then to now. Let's talk about, a lot of this is things that you will not understand. But again, a lot of it is an improvement on the scorecard. Critical path. Let's talk a little bit about critical path. Mrs. Sharp, tell them what a critical path is. If you got a mic? I'm going to include my super smart guys here.
You have one now? Yeah, I have one.
Hello, hello.
Thanks, sir. Critical path. Is it on?
I hear you.
So in any given process, you're doing several actions. The action that takes the longest would be the critical path for that process. One of the examples that we see, what we learned from the Air Force, is they use repairing a car, and you have to change the wipers, and you got to rotate the tires. And rotate the tires takes 20 minutes in this example, and changing the wipers takes 3 minutes. So of course the critical path is the tires. If I spend a lot of time improving how fast I change the windshield wipers, I'm not going to improve my critical path. And so for each of these gates, we identified the critical path, and that's what we attack.
Okay, next slide, please. So we've also developed something in order for us to see ourselves. In the past, again, very one-sided view of things. This is what we call our AOP dashboard. My great IT director kind of saw us, took her to Miami, and we developed this through the help of what was called AAR landing gear. This is really our gated system, how many aircraft are in WIP, how much time it takes to get them out of WIP, and then how we're doing as far as a green, amber, or red cycle throughout the process, so that everyone can see this. When you go around the depot, everyone can see what we look like holistically in one big view versus their own stovepipe view. So as we move forward, next slide. Go one more, apologize. One more. I'll go back, I apologize. No, go back to, sorry, I didn't scan these slides well enough. Go back to the previous one. Go back. So our guys can tell you these are the number of aircraft right now in gate 4 in WIP. So the goal is to have the number of aircraft, the number of WIP in each of these gates to be filled, and we move along seamlessly throughout the whole gates. Everyone can see that. So I can see right away that I've got aircraft down here in queue. These are aircraft waiting for parts. That's a bad thing for me, right? So I want to make sure that we have 0 here and all these gates are filled. So this is bad too. There's nothing in here when there should be a WIP of 1. There's nothing in here when there should be a WIP of 2. So everything else is good, and then I want to see this constantly moving, because that means to me aircraft are getting in and out of test flight. And that means to me that we've already, so in gate 7, we've already gotten our revenue out. Now the finishing touches need to be made to their helicopter. So if I see all those filled according to their working process or WIP, that's telling me we're succeeding, and the flow of aircraft is succeeding through there. And our synchronization with our supercells, along with DLA, our OEM partners, and B-17 is working properly. Communication flow is going. That's telling me that, and I can see that every single day on my computer in my office and also throughout the depot. So next slide. So right now, the closest aircraft we have to 275 days is what we call 6BZ-28. You can see here, it's trending right now to 286 days. I'm being told we're going to meet 275 days with that helicopter. That is the best case scenario in our litmus test. So we wanted to make sure that we were doing everything we could to coordinate with DLA, OEM, and B-17 so we could meet that 275 days. Was that easy? No, that wasn't easy at all. But you can see that the costs and the hours are really right on target for 275 days and being the best case scenario that we can see. What we want to prove to the enterprise is it can be done at 275 days. So when Mr. Strobridge said 100 aircraft out of CCAT a year, our goal right now, when we are talking about Victor model helicopters, is 48 a year with no delay in schedule. 275 days in our machine will get us to 48 a year. That's what the goal is. Now, can we adjust the machine? We can always adjust the machine to reflect whatever the PM needs, but we have to get better at what we're doing here. So the majority of that, one of the things that the dashboard tells me is touch time. My touch time right now, average touch time, and that means that people are turning wrenches on helicopters, was hovering around 289 days. My queue time, that means wait time for parts, was over 200 days. In some cases, 300. So you add those two together, a 500-day RTAT, or repair turnaround time, is not what our goal is. But if you take away the queue time, and the queue time is us communicating with DLA, OEMs, and B-17 to get parts flowing, you take that away, we're right at 275 days, if that makes any sense. So what we want to do is we want to take away the queue time, period. That 120 days outlook left of induction planning is key. That gate zero is key to our success to get an aircraft out in 275 days. But this is gonna make it, and this is gonna be our test to show to our bosses, so we can do it, but we need more help. Next slide. So here's where we were. If you can see, these are all RTATs, or repair cycle times. All these were hovering around some over 600 days, some at 500 days. The average was about 469, 500 days. Once we started AOP, down here, you can see the reduction in RTATs. And this is 6BZ28 here, hovering there. But again, we started it 3 October of last year. You can see the reductions already on our repair cycle times. So we are always constantly, my folks give me a whip flush every Friday, telling me the progress that we've made with AOP. And I can tell you we are making progress every single day. But it is not like an easy process. This is something that involves a lot of culture change, a little bit of mindset change for our folks on the ground. They don't truly understand it yet, but as long as my directors understand it and buy into it, that's really what the driving force is. And I will tell you, they have bought into it, and they know the success that we can achieve with AOP. So next slide, please. So this is just another indication of what 6BZ28, again, our litmus test for AOP. It had barely any queue. I think 4 days of queue total for 6BZ28. Is that right, Don? About 4 days of wait time. So that process is already in place and working because of the coordination and collaboration with all these other partners. Next slide. So CG talked a little bit about performance of promise. One of the metrics we're graded on now is if I promise you I'm going to, next slide please, if I promise you I'm going to build 30 helicopters next year, 36 is our goal next year, and I make 35 out of 36, that's a failure in the system of performance of promise. So I promised the field, the Army, we're going to build X amount of components, X amount of helicopters, and I'm tied to that goal. The goal for General Perna is 100% performance of promise. That is a good target for us. We're getting better every single day, but what I want to point out here is in the past, when we talked about performance to promise, our number one inhibitor was always process, always process. So we own process. The folks in the audience here with my directors, they own that process. I said it's going to be a true turnaround when the number one inhibitor is going to be parts. So now we have turned that around. Our number one inhibitor is parts, 35%, process is 24%. And we're continuing to push that downward as far as process goes. And P2P will enforce that for us and make sure that we get what's needed back out to the field so our warfighters can execute their plan. So next slide, please. So future programs, I think Mr. Strawbridge and Billy Jackson, next slide, talked about this a little bit. We're going to be doing some A to L still, L to Ls, and then we're going to eventually go to UH-60 Victors. So as they talked about, and I wasn't in here, I apologize for their discussion, but we will pretty much be the sole source of UH-60 Victors for the next several years to decade. And that'll be built here at CCAD with the help of many of our partners. Eventually, we're going to start doing the Mike models. Now, we talked a little bit about some kits, but we really have to get after AOP to make this happen so we can build 48 a year to get them back out to the warfighter and for them to really get aircraft back out much quicker. And this is a way to do it. The AOP, that what we're doing now is a way to do it. Next slide, please. So this is the Victor model. I think they already probably briefed this, sir, so I won't go into depth about this, but again, the biggest difference there is the glass cockpit, and we'll be able to do some wiring harness finishes there within CCAD. Next slide, please. Next slide. So one of the things that we're looking at 10 years down the road is once we get better at this, if you've been at CCAD, you know that we're working out of hangars along the bay. And what we do is deliver helicopters. We tug them back and forth from Hangar 8 to our hangars along the bay. The vision here is eventually to put everything in one, what we call the aircraft repair facility, which is our Building 8 now. Gut it totally. We'll start the MILCOM process soon, and then you'll see our gated system will flow just like our process should flow. The aircraft comes in here to gate 1, flows all the way through to gate 3, 4, and then eventually it'll go back out for paint, but it'll come back through here for test flight, and it should flow into one central facility. And what that does is it reduces our FOD, it reduces my guys are working out of hangars, 1940 era hangars, at about 120 degrees, June, July, and August, with about 100% humidity in most cases. That'll reduce all of that. So the stress and fatigue that they see every single day, it'll be a totally enclosed facility. And again, that's what we're going for in the future. So that once AOP matures, we will be able to start building this process to make it even better for our artisans and for the country. Next slide, please. So we talked about depot field teams. That's what our number one impact to the field right now. Our quickest way of impacting the field. When we send our depot field teams out, and Colonel Ryan talked about it, I mean, they're almost an immediate impact across the Army, and we continually will send those folks out. And so they're going to go out there with better equipment, better knowledge. Once we get AOP down into the lowest levels, they will come out of there with better knowledge and be able to help our forces in the field much quicker and much faster. So next slide, please. So in a nutshell, that's what I have for you as far as AOP. I really think we've turned the corner. I talked to Mr. Marriott a few days ago, who's our deputy to General Gabram, and we've always said this. When we start this AOP, it is a big culture change. It's going to be an ugly baby for the first several months, and it was very ugly. I mean, we were behind aircraft by about 6 at one point. But we always said once we start maturing the supply chain management, June, July, August timeframe, we're going to catch up. And certainly we did catch up. And even with the hurricanes that happened, our guys using the process that we put in place, we're 100% on aircraft recapped for this year. So subject to your questions, I'll field them at this time.
Oh, here's one right here.
So you and I have had this discussion many times, but yep. I'm going to ask you a question because I think it's worth the enterprise hearing your thoughts on this. You came into command with your vision and your way to go, and you're going to change command here coming up next summer, I believe.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on a new commander coming in? How are we going to set them up for success and not have this good plan be replaced with something else?
That's a great question, and that is very, very realistic. So every commander's got their own personalities. But I will tell you that because we have been so successful so far, my headquarters, AMCOM, is tied in and bought into this plan, bought into this process. Mr. Marriott even said it publicly and said, you are going to stick with AOP. We will make sure we enforce that with the new command structure. So my dialogue with her is going to be, she focuses on AOP at the component level this next year. So we're going to lay the foundation for her for the components. We've got to get better in components. I believe by the time I relinquish command this summer, AOP on the recap side will be a smooth machine, or Don Dawson will pay, but it will be a smooth machine, and it already is there. We've got buy-in. So a measure of success for me is when you go out to the lowest artisan on the floor and you start asking him about AOP and he starts regurgitating the same stuff that you've been saying the entire year, then you know you've had a measure of success. That, I think, is going to be a fixed platform, AOP on the recap side. She's going to have to make some tweaks on the component side. But I will tell you, Bob, we've already established that AOP is here to stay with AMCOM and AMC. But that's a great question.
Thanks, sir.
Go ahead.
Who else we got?
Right here.
Nope. You're not driving back, are you?
No, thank God. So I want to add on to that. So I'm going to take a do out on that because I think what we need to do is codify this in policy, some kind of guidance, so we don't lose the momentum. So I'm going to take that back as a task. And I know, Colonel Lanceta, you went to Letterkenny last week and you talked with Colonel Ledbetter on what you've done here at CCAD in relation to Letterkenny. So we're also looking to maybe incorporate some of those concepts as well. So, so Bob, I'm going to take that back, and so from an AMCOM perspective, we'll try to get this codified in some kind of policy guidance so we don't lose this momentum.
Yeah. I think, so I will be, truth in lending. CCAT has tried this before in the past. I think about 2005, 2006 called Concerto. The difference there, though, is LMP, right? So we have well, I failed to mention this, but we had a legacy system. It's called Dex, Mets, and Patsy. I don't want to bore you what they are. But it's just old systems where you take a hard copy and you send this down the pike. LMP, though, is a totally digital system, and you have to access the digital system to create it, and I can't believe I'm even saying this out loud as like a supply guy, but to create a demand in the supply system so that these guys can get what they need in time. We weren't doing that with the old legacy systems. LMP, using LMP for this process, it forces you to do that digitally so that our guys can have all the material flow that they need in a timely manner. So that's one of the reasons why that didn't succeed. The second reason was the support from the higher headquarters wasn't there. So I'll tell you, we have total support of what we're doing with this system now, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon.
More
Other questions?
Somebody's going to be brave. Come on now. Here we go.
Sir, I can't believe I'm going to save Don. But in reality, we own that. And I'm from the supply chain. I'm one of the division chiefs that run the UH-60 supercell. Yeah. So in reality, what Ms. Mosier is saying, that commitment to continue after the parts, and Don's part is to execute within the gate. That's what we need, and we don't want to lose sight of that, because we do. We always want to press it on a production guy, but really, I got to provide that production guy the material needed so that he can execute. Yeah. So that's the important thing that I've seen over my time here about how AOP can make us successful. Yeah. Is that material so Don can execute. Yeah. So.
And honestly, we need to prove to the enterprise that this works, because they've been hammering, going, you need to do this, you need to improve. And I think they're starting to see that we are improving it. And again, these metrics are really starting to get after it. Go ahead.
Roy.
So the one piece that I see as we come from the air vehicle to the component side is we also need that outside of the CCAD, but inside the enterprise family, to respond to that planning. Right. So that because when you get to the other side and you go to drum buffer rope and that integrated master schedule, the parts have to be there for that to work. So the DLAs and the AMCOMs, the B-17s, everybody have to respond to the planning. Right. And right now, I don't believe that we have enterprise agreement on the trust of that planning. Yeah. Much because it sins for the past. But we don't have the trust, I think, levels that we need for that to be successful. So we got to continue to foster that, I believe, for us to be successful on the component side.
You're right, Roy. Exactly right. I think, sir, did you have?
He's alive.
Actually, process is good as long as it's really paying dividends, paying off. If it's paying dividends at the time you change over, no new commander will reverse it.
Yes, sir.
To that end, just out of curiosity, why 275? Why not 180?
Okay, so Billy Jackson, is he in here? So that's a great question. So here's my answer to that. Originally, when I briefed this, so you do a value stream mapping. Who's familiar with value stream mapping? Okay, good part of the audience. So your value stream mapping identifies areas that you can improve on, and I did this value stream mapping before I came. The value stream mapping I came up with was 350 days, only because in coordination with the PM, that's what he really needed to begin with. But as you do more value stream mapping, as you identify non-value added time, queue time, cycle times with the value stream map, I knew that we can get down at actually, and please don't publicize it, but 269 days was what I came up with my value stream map for a UH-60 recap. That is really a best case scenario of having everything in place at the time. So 180 days is not in the realm of the impossible, as long as we have everything in place, and we are so good at forecasting, 100% forecasting accuracy, 100% parts availability. I think we can get to 180 days. But right now, it is 275 days is tough, only because I don't believe the supply chain is mature enough to get us to 275 yet. So in many cases, Roy Hollins is my source of supply for a lot of these things. He's my local manufacturing director, but I'm having him build things that we can to feed our own line. Until the supply system fully matures to our forecasting accuracy, and I always tell my guys, hey, look, we have got to get to 100% forecasting accuracy, because I want the rose pinned on someone else to provide us that part. Because as we said, sir, our biggest queue time is awaiting parts. So I'll tell you, 180 days is possible. If those guys have material that at the time they need, we can start reducing. And I'm even talking to Bob Sharp about reducing our gates from 9 to 5 to make it even more efficient as we go down the line. So I'm not going to say it's not possible, sir, but the supply chain has to mature to meet our needs. And that's really our number one inhibitor is supplies right now. Great question. No other questions? So I'm going to switch hats, sir. I've got, if you stand by for me. So I do want to thank, sir, thank you very much for. I got a couple of thank yous to do. So my security team, the security team from CCAD, you all haven't noticed them, but they're all over the place, making sure that you all are safe, and you never know in this day and age what can happen. But Vince, if you're here, thank you very much for your assistance. They're all in civilian clothing, and they've done a great job throughout that. Thank you to Bob Straden. Where's Bob Straden at? For your coordination with Bill Harris throughout this to make this a great event. It really has been great the last couple of years. But so Bill Harris, I'd like to have you come up here, please. Thank you very much for the last couple of years. You've been an awesome partner, and we really do appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Sir, come on up. Sir, congratulations, and we really appreciate, I tell you, the last couple of presidents have been truly, truly remarkable in supporting us during this time frame, and you had to skip the beat, sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So, sir, for you, thank you. You've been here every single year that I've been here. Appreciate that, and best of luck to you, and safe travels back.
Thank you very much.
Sir, I've got 2 coins for General Yellen and General Schlosser, if you wouldn't mind for me, but I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you very much.
It's yours to close, sir.
Okay, hey, this has been a hugely successful event the last couple of years I've been here. I really, truly appreciate the vendors coming here, the OEM partners, the soldiers that come from everywhere. We know how busy you all are, and it really means a lot to us that you're focused on the depot mission, what CCAD does, and we want you to carry the message for us, carry the water of what we do. So a lot of times, I was talking to General Schlosser in the hallway one day. He didn't realize that we were doing zero-time helicopters. He said for many years he didn't know that. So every time we've done this, it's been an education process, not only for me, my directors, but I think for everybody in the hall. So it has truly been a great event. So after I'm gone, I hope this carries on for many, many more years, and I'll try to come back for this as well. So thank you very much. Safe travels to you. Have a great day. Hua.